Just be yourself. Whether you're trying to impress a love interest, choose a career, or simply get out of a rut, it's the same old advice. But what does it actually mean to be yourself? Aren't you already yourself? It's this strange paradox where in order to be yourself, you are told to change in some way. How can one be themselves truly? Let's start with your personality, one of the main dimensions that defines you. It captures your traits, motivations, and identity and informs both ourselves and others on some level of who we are. The personality researcher Dan McAdams offers us a 3-level model of personality that could be explored in terms of how well someone knows us. Firstly, there are our traits. We pick up how someone is pretty quickly. They might be shy, ill-tempered, incredibly open-minded, or extremely organized. Importantly, they allow us to predict our behavior in a given situation. Although several tests and theories exist, all to varying degrees of validity, the Big Five is presently the most used measure in trait psychology research. Others, such as the Myers-Briggs test, are considerably less empirical. Specifically, the Myers-Briggs test relies on strict binaries of traits, i.e. pure extroverts or introverts, whereas trait research tends to show that such traits usually fall on a spectrum, with most of us in the middle. Traits can also change throughout our lifetime, suggesting that they are more likely dynamic states than they are strict types. Traits, then, don't seem like an ideal way to discover who you are. Taking a test, you're only really being told where you fall along a statistical distribution, and furthermore that this placement can shift. That's why McAdams then introduces another level, motives. What do we want? Although there are a myriad of ways in which to examine motivations, I'll just focus on 2. Most individuals, firstly, tend to fall along the spectrum of either extrinsic or intrinsic aspirations. Namely, they tend to be motivated extrinsically in terms of external rewards and approval, or intrinsically in terms of a volitional and self-endorsed drive towards something. There's like a million research articles that suggest that intrinsic rewards gives you more bang for your buck in terms of happiness and life satisfaction. And then there are the motives themselves, namely power, affiliation, and achievement. The achievement motive is the need to accomplish something and overcome some sort of challenge. The power motive is the need to have some sort of influence on others, and the affiliation motive is the need to establish and maintain positive and meaningful relationships. What gets you going is mostly determined by the general satisfaction you derive from achieving goals in each category. Still, this only gives us a piece of the pie. If someone asked you, "Who are you?" and you couldn't use ethnicity, occupation, your name, gender, or age, you'd be forced to respond in terms of McAdams' final level of personality, narrative identity. You'd tell them a story of yourself. We are all authors, and we continue to write this story with increasing nuance throughout our lives. This process provides unity and coherence, and is even a marker of maturity and well-being. In narrative identity, there's something called a reminiscence bump, where most of our life story tends to pull from material in young adulthood. This is largely due to the completion of neurocognitive development at this time. Our brains can finally form a coherent idea of what we're doing here. Yes, this sounds nice and everything, but what if you simply can't? What if you are trying to be yourself, but you simply cannot find any hint of coherence or meaning behind who you are? In fact, the question of who you are only gives you a sense of dread. What if you are simply too complex to understand? This video is sponsored by Brilliant. During my undergrad, I was actually researching this exact topic, personality coherence. One issue was that I had to quickly understand lots of complex statistics, and thankfully I found Brilliant to help me do just that. Brilliant is the best way to learn math, data science, and computer science interactively. It has thousands of lessons from basic to advanced topics, and they even add new topics every month. No matter your skill level, Brilliant lets you learn computer science logic and scientific concepts entirely at your own pace. Brilliant has thousands of lessons and adds new content monthly. I've been working through Brilliant's data science course, which teaches you all about hypothesis testing, reading graphs, and understanding probability. And it's super interactive. This is one of the main reasons why I like Brilliant, because it gets you to learn by doing. You get to play around with so many stunning and interactive visualizations. Importantly, interactive learning has been proven to be 6 times more effective than passive learning. To learn anything, you've really got to do it. To try everything Brilliant has to offer, free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/Sisyphus55 or click on the link in the description. The first 200 of you will get 20% off Brilliant's annual premium subscription. Now we're going to switch from McAdams' discussion of levels and go into the nature of personality itself. We all vary in terms of how coherent and complex our identities truly are, and this is mostly researched in the field of personality coherence, which is the lawful organization of psychological attributes within the individual. This is broadly studied under the 2 ways in which we organize knowledge about ourselves. Firstly, there is differentiation. This determines how complex we are. Do we have multiple self-aspects? How novel and diverse is your life story? Do you party late at night, wake up early for judo, attend your cult meeting, and then go to your 9-to-5 accounting job? Or are you someone who has eaten the same food, watched the same movies, and worked the same job for the last 10 years? How many different aspects are you? It should be noted that self-complexity does not in itself predict well-being, but those who are arguably less complex have been shown to be prone to mood swings and unstable self-esteem, as they have less self-aspects to rely on when disaster strikes. Secondly, there is integration. How coherent and unified are these aspects? This is unrelated to self-complexity. In fact, those with a seemingly diverse set of interests and behaviors can still derive a meaningful narrative from their life. Integration is measured in terms of self-concept clarity, the extent to which the contents of the self are clearly defined, internally consistent, and stable. It tells us whether we know who we are, something important to have when we're trying to be ourselves. Those high in self-concept clarity tend to be a lot more happy, a lot less lonely, and overall consider their lives to be more meaningful. This may be because they are better able to live coherent lives and know who they are. They can be themselves. But how exactly do they do this? The idea of being yourself denotes a certain action taking to involve yourself in, to go from A to B. In other words, it is the setting of, striving for, and achieving of the goal of being yourself. Those with high self-concept clarity are also higher in terms of personality integration. They feel that what they are doing day to day aligns with their values, interests, and choices. This has been heavily researched under cybernetic control theory, which argues that there is a hierarchy of functioning at the highest level, abstract goals or idealized self-images, followed by principles such as values, and then programs, actions based on values, and then sequences, goals. Our goals then function as a way to reduce the discrepancy between hierarchy levels. Ideally, our values should align with our goals and our goals with our habits. Ken Sheldon expertly measured this hierarchy in terms of vertical coherence, horizontal coherence, and organismic congruence. Vertical coherence, as mentioned, is how our goals relate to each other between levels. Do you want to make the world a better place, but all of your goals in the next 5 years revolve around you getting a 6-pack? Then that would be low vertical coherence. But are all of your goals in the service of donating and activism? Then that is high vertical coherence. Notably, vertical coherence predicts the most positive outcomes out of all measures. Horizontal coherence, in comparison, measures the coherence between goals at the same level. Yes, it's good that all of your goals to get rich are in service of each other, but do they relate to your overarching value of meaningful relationships? Horizontal coherence has been shown to be a relatively weak predictor of positive outcomes. That is, unless our goals are being pursued autonomously. This is captured in the strangely named organismic congruence. What is this? As defined, organismic congruence tells us why people are striving to begin with. It captures the motivational element. Namely, are we pursuing goals extrinsically or intrinsically? Do we want to be a good person because that's what society has told us, or because we find this overarching striving to be rewarding in itself? Overall, Sheldon found that the integrated person, the person who is being themselves, have coherent goal hierarchies. Their short-term goals match with their medium-term strivings and long-term visions. And this is all supported by a holistic push to follow their own values without succumbing to external pressures. Okay, great, but how do we even know what we want? I'll admit that I was initially skeptical of the idea that people actually know what they want. But I was lucky enough throughout undergrad to research this exact topic. I had to go through hundreds of statements about people's idea of the good life, and time again I found that people who self-reported as having followed through with their idea of the good life were happier and mentally healthier. Maybe people do know what they want. Maybe people do know themselves more than I was giving them credit for. The issue then is not actually a lack of self-knowledge. Rather, it is within those moments where we begin to lose ourselves and betray who we are. Deep down, we do have inklings and gut feelings that tell us what we align with, but fear of judgment, of inadequacy, and of potential isolation can lead us astray. We may spend our entire lives pursuing the goals of others. This is why self-insight is so important. Self-insight isn't this extensive process of analyzing and criticizing our every motive and desire. Rather, it's a simple awareness of what we want and the ability to translate this want into action. The good news is that self-insight can be improved. For one, mindfulness has been shown to greatly increase our ability to know who we are. Mindfulness is nothing more than the capacity to pay and maintain attention to the moment with an open and non-judgmental mind. We don't need to analyze our passions until they conform to the wishes of our families, friends, or partners. We should simply be with them and observe them with curiosity rather than judgment. Secondly, self-insight is related to those with a proactive personality. These are individuals who are relatively unconstrained by situational forces and identify opportunities and act on them, show initiative, take action, and persevere until meaningful change occurs. The ability to take action is of course easier when we have clear goals that are both horizontally and vertically coherent. And as shown by research, pursuing these goals proactively is a lot easier when what we have chosen to pursue comes to us volitionally. Yes, this was a word salad of psychology terminology that really just leaves us with the cliche final idea that we should simply be ourselves. But I do hope this serves to show why such instruction is far more complex than we might have previously imagined. And more importantly, I hope it leads some to find courage in pursuing who they always have been.